In our shop, we have a number of lathes, a number of different models of lathes. This one is a Lathe Safety. It's the largest and most powerful one we have in the shop. We have smaller lathes, other brands, but today we're going to talk about this one. The lathes are essentially the same in principle when it comes to safety. There's a number of things you want to do before, you need to be aware of, that you do before, during, and after running a lathe. The first thing is never operate a lathe if you're not familiar with the operating procedure, or if you have questions. Don't attempt to run it until you get your questions answered and you're totally comfortable with the operation of it. One important part about when running a lathe is the area around the lathe. You want to make sure the floor is clean, no chips laying on the floor you can trip on or slip on. Oils or coolant should be cleaned up if they're spilled. Stuff shouldn't be piled all over the lathe, like the headstock here. This stuff, all this junk up on here should not be here. Chuck could fall off, anything could fall off, get into a rotating chuck or hit the workpiece and throw it at you. It's unsafe. The headstock should be, it's not a storage shelf, it's the top of the headstock of the lathe and should be relatively clean. Never attempt to run a lathe, or any machine for that matter, if your senses are impaired by medication or other substances, which can cause you to be unsafe in the operation of the lathe and possibly cause injury to yourself or others. When operating, dress appropriate for the operation of a lathe. You don't want any loose sleeves, dangling clothing, anything that could get wrapped up in the lead screws or the chuck. If you have long hair, it needs to be secured. You definitely do not want jewelry on your hands or a necklace that can get wrapped up in the machine. You need safety glasses in our shop, that's procedure. No open-toed shoes, sandals, or flip-flops. No shorts. Dress appropriately. When you first come up to the machine, before you turn it on, make sure all the guards are in place. This machine has a guard on the chuck, which swings down. That's used in it's not used all the time. In certain instances where the chuck may be throwing chips at you or something, use that guard. There's guards on the end for the pulleys, on the belts. There's guards on the screws that run the carriage. Just look at the machine and make sure all the guards are in place securely. Do not attempt to operate it if they're not. Should you be putting a long workpiece in the lathe, a heavy workpiece or a heavy lathe fixture or whatever, get help. Don't try to do it yourself. Trying to lift something heavy by yourself can result in strain or injury. Something very important when running a lathe is securing the workpiece in whatever work holding device we have. We have a number of them for the lathe. This one is a 3-jaw chuck. Turn the chuck key, put the workpiece in, tighten it. Make sure it's snug and tight where it won't come loose during the cut or afterwards, which could cause damage to the machine or personal injury to yourself. One important thing about the lathe is this. This is called a chuck key, and this is where we never leave it. Once you have the part in the lathe and it's tightened up, or you've removed the part from the lathe, this comes out. Get in the habit of taking this out. Do not let go of it until it's in the rack. That's the safest place for it. The only time it should be out of that rack is when you're installing a workpiece or removing a workpiece. This lathe is turned on with this thing in there. It's going to throw it at you. It's going to hit you. It's going to hit somebody. It's going to cause damage. It's going to cause injury, severe injury. Remember, hold on to it till you're done with it. Put it in a proper place to store it. Part of machining metal in a lathe is it creates metal chips. Some of them are long and stringy, some of them are short. They're all sharp. They will all hurt you. Never use your hands to remove chips to clean the lathe. Use a brush. If they're long, stringy chip, use a pair of pliers. Get them off. And always stop the lathe before cleaning chips. Do not do that with the spindle running or the feet engaged. Also stop the lathe if you're making adjustments or taking measurements. Common sense would tell you that. We tell you too. Always turn the lathe off before making adjustments or cleaning it. Never use compressed air to clean any machine, the lathe in particular. Blowing chips around, you can blow them on the person working next to you, you can blow them in yourself. Chips get in your skin or your eyes, it can be very painful and cause injury. Never use compressed air to clean a machine. Whenever removing a workpiece, adjusting a workpiece, move the carriage to the right. Get it out of the work area. The sharp tool bit, get it away from where you're going to be working with the workpiece or the stock you have in there. You can see where an inadvertent movement could cause a laceration of your arm. It's always just good practice. Roll the carriage out of the way and get it out of the way. Creates a wide open area to work in, free of injury. Before taking a workpiece out, after machining, there's always burrs on the workpiece. It's in a lathe, the good thing about the lathe is it's easy to get the burrs off. You take a file, emery cloth, a number of different ways, but deburr the part before taking it out of the machine. I always tell people that one of their best friends on the lathe or the mill or any machine is the red button. It's your best friend. This Matosa here has the red button here on the front of the carriage. Should something happen that you need to immediately turn this machine off, you hit the red button, it kills the power of the motor, the machine stops. It can be your best friend. Don't forget it, and always before you start the lathe, any machine you come up you're not familiar with, make sure you know where the emergency stop button is. When you're finished, you want to start it up again, you pull it out and you're back in business. When running a lathe, avoid talking to people. If somebody comes up and wants to talk, stop the machine. Never allow people around you or yourself to horseplay or fool around while running a lathe. That creates carelessness and can cause injury, serious injury. When running a lathe, you should be the only one touching anything on the lathe, turning it on or off, engaging the feeds, anything. You're the operator, you're the one. If somebody comes up, tries to help you, don't allow that.